He's England's all-time leading scorer, a top-tier striker who terrorized the Bundesliga. His goal numbers are ridiculous enough to belong in the history books. But bring up his name, and somebody's always ready with that same jab. This guy's cursed. He never wins anything. It might be the most unfair thing in football. A man who perfected the art of scoring goals, judged by the one thing he could never get his hands on. People remember the penalty he missed, the final he lost. They forget that he's the same guy who dragged teams that couldn't even reach a final on their own, right up to the doorstep of a championship, over and over again. His name is Harry Kane. Welcome back to FutVerse. Today we're telling his story. Harry Kane, a man who's tasted heartbreak more times than almost anyone in the game, who's lost trophy after trophy, and who has never once stopped believing. From a chubby kid cut from academy football to one of Europe's most feared strikers. What did that road actually look like, paved as it was with so much disappointment? The story starts in 1993. Kane was born that year into an ordinary, working-class family in London. At 8 years old, chasing a football dream, he joined Arsenal's academy. A year later, they let him go. The verdict from the coaches was brutal. Too chubby, too slow, no real talent for the game. Just like that. An 8-year-old kid got shut out of the very place he dreamed of starting. It's hard to imagine now how badly reality would eventually crush that verdict. But at the time, for an 8-year-old, it was a gut punch. For a lot of kids, a dismissal that casual is where the dream just quietly ends. Not for Kane. He buried that hurt somewhere deep and let it turn into fuel. Fuel that would push him to keep training long after everyone else had gone home. After Arsenal, Kane moved to Tottenham's academy. Even there, the club barely paid him any attention. Starting in 2011, he was loaned out 4 separate times to Leyton Orient, Millwall, Norwich, and Leicester City, grinding it out in the lower divisions year after year. Rundown pitches, barely any eyes on him, a world away from the stages he'd later command. During his loan at Leicester especially, he could barely lock down a regular starting spot. That kind of drifting would be enough to burn the edge off almost any young player. A loan, at its core, is your own club telling you they're not sure about you, not ready to cut you loose, but not convinced you're good enough to keep either. And down in those low-profile leagues, you could play out of your mind and still go completely unnoticed. Plenty of talented young players fade out exactly that way, loan after loan, until they just disappear into the crowd. Kane was the exception. He treated every loan spell as a chance to prove himself, every rundown pitch as a place to sharpen his game. While others complained about the circumstances, about how unfair it all was, he just quietly kept doing the work. That mindset is the real reason he eventually broke through. But that long stretch in the wilderness didn't kill his drive. If anything, it turned him into a maniac about it. Those years, Kane developed an obsession with extra training, pushing himself over and over to get better. When everyone else had wrapped up practice, he was still out there working on his finishing. When everyone else was resting, he was still picking apart every technical detail, trying to make it just a little sharper. He had something to prove. That the judgment that got him cut all those years ago was wrong. And in a strange way, that rejection is part of what made him. Naturally gifted players often get everything too easily, and they can end up missing that relentless edge. But someone like Kane, written off as talentless from the start, has to build every single step from the ground up. Every skill hammered into place through thousands and thousands of reps. That's exactly why his game never looked flashy but was terrifyingly consistent. All of it built on hard labor. People say Kane's style isn't sexy, that there's no jaw-dropping dribble, no highlight reel flair. But that plainness is exactly what ages the best. Speed fades, explosiveness fades, but a game built on positioning, on football intelligence, on pure technique, that's the kind of game that lets you stretch your prime out for years. That's a wisdom that only comes from clawing your way up the hard way. His chance finally came in the 2014-15 season. Tottenham's regular starting forward was out of form, and manager Mauricio Pochettino took a gamble on the young Kane. Kane grabbed the opportunity with both hands. That season, he scored 21 Premier League goals. All of England was asking the same question. How did that chubby kid nobody wanted suddenly turn into this? Plenty of pundits called it a fluke, a flash in the pan. Kane didn't bother arguing. He let his performances do the talking. 2 straight Premier League Golden Boots, goal after goal, shutting up every doubter in the room. And here's the scary part about Kane. He's never just been a poacher hanging around the 6-yard box. As he got older and more experienced, he kept expanding his game, dropping deep to link play, threading pinpoint long balls, scoring from range outside the box. He evolved from a pure finisher into a true target man who could orchestrate an entire attack. That versatility made him worth far more than his goal tally alone ever showed. Then came the 2018 World Cup in Russia, the first real highlight of his career. In the group stage against Tunisia, England couldn't break through, and the game was slipping toward a draw. Deep into stoppage time, Kane rose up and buried a header to win it. He'd finish the tournament with 6 goals, take home the Golden Boot, and lead England back to a World Cup semi-final for the first time in 28 years. For a country that basically invented the game and had gone decades without a trophy to show for it, Kane's emergence lit a fire under an entire generation of fans. People started believing this composed, reliable striker, a guy who never flinched in the biggest moments, might actually be the one to end the Three Lions' long wait for a trophy. And that's exactly why the losses that followed hurt so much. Kane kept carrying everyone's hopes right up to the final step, only to watch them collapse there, over and over. That so close, yet again, feeling would end up defining almost his entire international career, and it's the deepest scar he carries. For a moment, he was England's hero. But after the glory came the blows. Right before the 2019 Champions League final, Kane suffered a serious ankle ligament injury. Still, wanting to help Tottenham chase their first ever Champions League trophy, he chose to play through it anyway. The final was at the Wanda Metropolitano in Madrid. Just 2 minutes in, Liverpool scored from a penalty. Kane, still hobbled, couldn't get anything going all match. Not a single dangerous shot against Liverpool's defense. Tottenham lost 2-0. When the final whistle blew, Kane sank to the turf and buried his face in his shirt. Right next to him, Liverpool fans were going wild in celebration. In that massive stadium, it felt like he was the only person left, sitting alone with his loss. That image would go on to become one of the saddest snapshots of his career. For one shot at a trophy, he was willing to walk out on a leg that could have given out at any moment, and fate paid him back with a beatdown he couldn't do a thing about. Competitive sport doesn't care about sacrifice. It doesn't cut you slack just because you gave everything. But even so, the decision to play hurt still deserves every bit of respect. Because in that moment, he wasn't thinking about his own stats. He was thinking about a trophy that was almost within reach. That's just how brutal football can be. Sometimes you give it everything, and it still doesn't hand you what you wanted. And that loss was only the beginning. Kane kept running into heartbreak on the biggest stages. At Euro 2020's final, England fell on penalties, watching the trophy slip away one more time. At the 2022 World Cup against France, Kane normally rock solid from the spot, missed the equalizing penalty that could have changed everything. Fate seemed to save its cruelest jokes for his biggest moments. And the hardest part about these heartbreaks is that most of them had nothing to do with Kane playing badly. Quite the opposite. He was often the best player on the pitch, the one who'd single-handedly carried the team to the final in the first place. But football takes 11 players, and no matter how good one man is, he can't control the scoreline alone. So his disappointments always carried this particular tragedy. He'd already done everything humanly possible, and it still wasn't enough to change the outcome. In the summer of 2023, at 30 years old, Kane made up his mind to finally break the curse that had followed him for years. He left Tottenham, the club he'd spent 19 years with, for a €100 million move to Bundesliga giants Bayern Munich. Everyone figured winning a trophy at Bayern would be a walk in the park. Reality had other plans. In his first season at Bayern, Kane scored 36 Bundesliga goals, a record for a foreign player's debut season in the league. It was about as close to perfect as it gets. The Bundesliga's pace and defensive intensity are nothing like the Premier League, and putting up numbers like that as a brand new arrival says everything about how adaptable Kane is and how sharp his pure scoring instinct really is. And yet, that nearly perfect individual season ended with exactly 0 trophies. That's maybe the most absurd, most gutting thing about Kane's career. Almost every single season, every single tournament, he turns in a performance that belongs among the very best strikers alive, and the trophy still finds a way to slip past him. That season, Xabi Alonso's Leverkusen put together an impossible, unbeaten league campaign and snapped Bayern's 11-year run of Bundesliga titles. So Bayern walked away that season with nothing. No Bundesliga, no German Cup, no Champions League. And Kane came up empty again. Almost overnight, the internet was flooded with jokes about him being cursed to never win a thing. But faced with all that mockery, Kane didn't fold. Carrying that stubborn refusal to quit that was baked into who he was, he stepped back onto the field once more. At Euro 2024, the round of 16 against Slovakia became one of the defining moments of his career. England were flat the whole match, 1 foot out the door, until Jude Bellingham's overhead kick in the 90th minute plus tied it up. Then, right at the start of extra time, Kane came through, rising high in the box for a header that won the game outright, pulling his team back from the brink of elimination. That goal was the purest example of what it means to be an elite striker. No matter how dire things look, as long as the match isn't over, he's still the guy you trust to finish it. That kind of clutch mentality is honestly rarer than the goal itself. Because in moments like that, a team on the edge of getting knocked out, everyone else rattled, the pressure warps most players' game completely. Kane, somehow, stays ice cold in exactly those moments and finds the net anyway. That's not luck. That's a sense of responsibility carved into his bones. He'd long since gotten used to carrying his team's hopes on his own shoulders. Unfortunately, in the final, England lost to Spain, and Kane still didn't get his hands on the trophy. But after that tournament, he officially passed Wayne Rooney to become England's all-time top scorer. England is where modern football was born, a country with over a century of legendary strikers. From Bobby Charlton to Gary Lineker, Alan Shearer, Wayne Rooney. Standing at the top of a list that stacked is, on its own, the highest honor a striker can earn. Goal by goal, Kane carved his name into the very top of England's football history. Trophies belong to a team, a single night, but all-time leading scorer belongs to Kane alone, a piece of glory that can never be taken away. And all those jokes that had spread across the internet slowly, without anyone quite noticing, turned into genuine admiration. People finally understood what he'd been missing was never ability. It was luck. It was teammates who could carry some of the load. It was fate deciding, just once, to smile on him. 2 years later, at the 2026 World Cup, fate seemed to play the same familiar trick on Kane all over again. As England's captain and attacking centerpiece, Kane once again carried the team on his back. Just like always, he was the reliable finisher, his consistent output dragging the three lions through the bracket all the way to the semifinal. Everyone thought his moment was finally coming. But in the semifinal, England ran into Messi's Argentina. It was a brutal, grinding battle. Argentina's midfield choked off Kane and Bellingham, England's two main creative outlets, almost suffocating them, leaving them without a single comfortable touch. Kane was smothered the entire match, and for all his ability, there was nowhere for it to go. England conceded twice late, in stoppage time and extra time, and lost 2-1, knocked out yet again, right at the doorstep of the trophy. In the third-place match against France that followed, with the starters given a rest, England even left Kane on the bench. He watched from the sideline as his teammates played out a wild 6-4 goal fest. A quiet spectator to his own team's game. Another tournament. Another semi-final. Another trophy slipping through his fingers. The word trophyless still seemed to hang over him like a shadow. But this time, almost nobody was mocking him for it, because everyone understood. This elimination genuinely wasn't on him. He'd already done everything a player possibly could. From Tottenham to England to Bayern, no matter where he went or how many goals he scored, that heavy trophy always slipped through his fingers at the very last second. Some joke that Kane must be cursed? But jokes aside, who could really understand what it's like to pour your entire life into this game? To come one step from the dream over and over, only to get pushed right back to the start each time. Kane's whole career has been one long fight against fate. To this day, he's still missing that one truly major trophy. But from getting cut as a kid, to years bouncing around on loan, to heartbreak after heartbreak on the biggest stages, he's never once bowed to any of it. Real strength was never about never losing. It's about getting knocked down 100 times by fate and still finding a way to get up for the 101st. That's basically the story of Kane's entire career. Cut at 8, he got up. Loaned out with nobody watching, he got up. Called a flash in the pan, he got up. Heartbreak after heartbreak. Labeled trophyless again and again. He still got up. Every single time. He might not be the most gifted player who ever lived, but he's certainly one of the least willing to accept defeat. And that refusal isn't some momentary burst of grit. It's a discipline he's carried for decades. From age 8 to his 30s, from academy trials to World Cup finals, through every rejection and every failure, his love for the game and his commitment to it never once wavered. Sticking with something that long, at that level, for that many years, that alone is already the mark of a legend. Trophies are the simplest and the crudest way to measure success. But the real thing that makes football move people isn't trophies at all. It's the refusal to accept mediocrity, the willingness to face failure head on, and never, ever giving up. Life is a lot like football. Trophies eventually tarnish. Records eventually get broken by someone else. The only thing that lasts forever is the backbone that refuses to bend, even in the hardest times. We tend to rank a player's greatness purely by how many trophies he's won. That's not wrong, exactly, but it often makes us overlook something far more valuable. What makes Kane's story so moving was never how much he won. It's that after losing so many times, he still chose to believe, still chose to show up on that field. That kind of stubborn persistence, doing it anyway, even knowing it might not work, defines a person more than any trophy ever could. So, whether or not he ever gets his hands on that trophy, in the hearts of millions of fans, Harry Kane has already been crowned. At the end of the day, Kane's story doesn't just move football fans, because his journey is basically a mirror for every one of us. We've all been told we weren't good enough. We've all gritted our teeth through days that felt hopeless. We've all given everything we had and still watched what we wanted slip right through our fingers. But Kane's entire career tells us this. Success might take a little luck, but a person's worth was never meant to be defined by whether they succeed. What actually matters is whether, after getting knocked down again and again, you're still willing to get back up, still brave enough to keep loving what you love and keep chasing it.